Hello, this is Ted. What I want to do in this video is give you a quick overview of Excel, show you how to plot some data, and then also do a linear regression analysis. And this will be useful if you don't have a lot of experience with Excel, and in turn this will be useful for working on your pre-lab and post-lab for the calcium carbonate experiment. Okay, so when you open up Excel, this is the main um, window that you'll see. On the bottom, you'll see sheet 1 is active. If you want to add more sheets, you can just press this button on the bottom and have as many sheets as you want. I suspect there's a limit, but I don't know what that limit is. Let's go back to sheet 1. So in Excel, what we're seeing are these columns with letters and rows with numbers, and then each of these little rectangles are called cells. So here I've highlighted cell A1. And what you can do in these rows and columns is input data. So what I'm going to do is just enter some made up data. So let's say we were growing a plant and we want to monitor the growth of the plant over time. So normally you'd put your x-axis first, and that's going to be your independent variable. So time, weeks, and then my dependent variable, so the height of the plant is going to be dependent on the time. So this will be height centimeters. And if you want this text to show up a little bit better, you can just make this column a little bit wider, no problem. Now let's just type in some numbers. So 1 week, 2 weeks, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. That's pretty good. And I'm just going to paste in some data here, highlighting these cells and just going Control V from an independent spreadsheet. So now I've got my data, my X and Y data of time, or height as a function of time. Okay, so we've got our data entered in our spreadsheet, and now what we're going to do is highlight those two columns. So I'm just using my left mouse button, and then we're going to try to plot this data. So go to the menu, go Insert, and over here you can see lots of different charts. I'm just going to choose a scatter plot, and I'm just going to choose this first one, and there we go. Okay, so this is a scatter plot. What I like about this is it plots the individual data points. And you can see Excel didn't do a very good job of labeling the axes. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Okay, so I don't like the title. Excel just chose to use my y-axis label as the title. I don't like that. So if you just double click on the title, you can change that. I'm just going to change this to plant growth as a function of time. Okay. And then if you want to add X and Y axes, which you certainly do, which you should, just highlight the chart and then click this little plus sign. That will show you chart elements. If you go to chart elements, you can click on axis titles. So just click that, and now you can see we can type in our titles for our axes. So we'll type in height in centimeters here, and then we can do the same for the x-axis. This would be time weeks. Okay, so now things are looking better. Hey, maybe I want to make this bold, make it stand out a little bit. Just go to Home, click on the bold font here. That looks a little bit better. Okay. Maybe I want to center that a little bit, just highlight it, drag it over, make it look nice and pretty. And the next thing I like to do is adjust my X and Y axes value. So if you look at the Y axis, that looks pretty good. We've got 0 to 14. But let's say we want to zoom in a little bit more on the X axis. I want to maybe change the limit to 11 versus 12. So just double click the X axis and then go axis options over here, sorry, and click on this bar here, axis options, and I can change this to a maximum of 11. And let's change this to back to 0. There we go. And I can click outside. It looks maybe just a little bit better. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add a trend line to my plot. So once again, highlight the plot just by clicking on it. Go to the plus sign, and let's add a trend line. There's my trend line. So you can see the data looks quite linear. And keep in mind you have different options for your trend line. So I think the default is probably linear, but I want to point out if you just click the arrow to the right of trend line, you can get different fits for your data. But let's just click linear for now. Okay, so I'd also like to display the equation of the line on the plot. So once again, highlight the plot, click on the plus button, go to trend line, and more options. And then if you click over here on the far right, you can get options for your trend line. And if you click here on the bottom here, it says display equation on a chart. So there's our equation. And then I want the r squared value as well. And to calculate r, just take the square root of that r squared value. So we've got the equation, but it's kind of in the way, so I'm just going to highlight that and move it to the left a little bit. Okay, so y equals mx plus b, my slope and y-intercept, and my correlation coefficient. So correlation r squared value of 0.994 means that the x and y data are quite linear with one another. Another thing I want to show you is how to get rid of grid lines. So Excel seems to want to have grid lines in their plot. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes not. If you want to get rid of grid lines, just highlight the grid lines, and that should bring up this option on the right, and you can just hit no line. Those go away, and you can do the same with the vertical grid lines. Just go no line, and now those are gone. But if I do delete grid lines, I like to typically add tick marks to the axes. So to add tick marks, just highlight the axis, and then here's this option for tick marks. So click on that, and then let's see, we'll do major type inside, and you can see those tick marks pop up. Let's do the same for the y-axis. We'll do inside. Helps you see the data a bit more. Another thing I don't like about Excel is they make these axes in very gray, and it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So I like to make them a little bit darker. So you can just click the axis, go to fill in line, this left option, and I can change that color to black. Makes it a little bit better than gray. And I can do the same with the y-axis. Let's change that to black instead of gray. I think that makes it look a bit better as well. And if you don't like the perspective of your plot, you can change the shape a bit. So if you highlight the shape, you can make it skinnier, wider, whatever you prefer. I typically like mine more rectangular, but it's a matter of preference. So, I also want to stress that it's good to save your work early on. So sometimes I even like to save my worksheet before I've done any work. So just do a file, save it to your computer or your network drive so that you don't lose your data, and then make sure you save it before you leave the program. And the last thing I want to do is talk about copying and pasting your plot. So one option, or a couple options, if you go highlight the plot like this and then go copy. Notice you can copy or copy as a picture. Let's just do copy first, and let's paste that into Word as an example. If I paste it in Word, notice I can edit it. Let's just undo that. But if I copy it as a picture and now paste that into Word, notice I can't, sorry. It wants me to, we'll do as shown on screen. Okay, great. And now let's try repasting that. Now notice it's behaving like an image rather than an editable graph. So a couple, and there's pros and cons of each method of pasting, but you do note that you have a couple options there. And yet another option for your plot would be to save it as a PDF. So if you go File, Print, you're going to print selected chart, and then maybe you want to print it as a PDF. And if you hit print, you can save it to any folder you'd like. So lots of options for saving your data, printing, and pasting into other documents. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully you have a better sense on how to enter data, plot data, work with your data, and do a linear regression analysis. Thanks for watching.